In May of 2024, a software company called Klarna, the Swedish buy now pay later firm whose adverts you have almost certainly scrolled past, made a quiet announcement on a quarterly earnings call. They had built an artificial intelligence assistant. They had given it the job of customer service. And in its first month of full operation, this single piece of software had handled 2.5 million conversations. It had resolved them, on average, in under 2 minutes. It was performing the work, the company said, of 700 full-time human beings. Those 700 human beings did not get a leaving party. They were not, in most cases, fired in a single dramatic moment. They were simply not replaced. Their contracts ended. Their roles were quietly closed on the internal job board. Their colleagues, the ones still left, were told that the company was now leaner, more efficient. More, the chief executive said in a now-deleted interview, ambitious about its margins. This was not a forecast. This was not a white paper. This was not a man in a gray suit talking about what might happen by 2030. This was a press release, in May, in 2024. And it is the moment, if anyone bothers to write the history honestly, that the obituary of the modern white-collar economy will probably begin. Tonight, I want to talk about what is already gone, not what is coming. What has already happened, while you were busy, while the news was about something else, while the conversation in the pub was still about whether artificial intelligence could write a poem. Because somewhere in the last 24 months the conversation stopped being theoretical, and the bodies started piling up, and almost nobody noticed, because the bodies were spreadsheets. They were org charts. They were quietly redacted lines on a LinkedIn page that used to say software engineer at Microsoft, and now says simply, open to opportunities. Let me show you the receipts. In 2023, IBM paused the hiring of 7,800 roles. The company's chief executive on camera said that he expected most of those jobs to never come back, because the work could now be done by software. He said this calmly, in a suit, on Bloomberg. The interview is online. Almost nobody watched it. In January of 2024, Google laid off 12,000 people. The company did not formally cite artificial intelligence as the reason. It did not need to. The very next quarter, its capital expenditure on AI infrastructure rose by tens of billions of dollars. The money for the staff did not vanish. It moved across the page. In February of 2024, Duolingo, the language learning app, terminated a tranche of its human translator contractors. The reason given, in writing, was that artificial intelligence could now do their job. The translators had, in many cases, helped train the system that replaced them. They had been told it was a productivity tool. In April of 2024, Dropbox laid off 500 employees, 16% of its workforce, in what the chief executive described in his memo as a pivot towards an AI-first future. The memo is still online. It is, if you read it slowly, one of the most chilling corporate documents of the decade. He thanks the people he is firing for their service. He explains that the future requires different talent. He uses the word transformation 7 times. In September of 2024, Salesforce, one of the largest software companies on Earth, fired roughly 700 people. In the same quarter, it announced an army of what it called Agent Force, software agents designed to perform sales, support, and administration tasks autonomously. The chief executive, in a television interview, stated on the record that he would hire no further customer support staff in 2025. None. 0. The role in his company was finished. By the end of 2025, the running total of publicly announced AI-driven layoffs in the United States alone had passed 100,000. In the first quarter of 2026, the year we are currently living in, another 61,000 were added. These are only the ones companies admitted to. The Harvard Business Review, in a survey of 1,000 global firms published in January of this year, found that 60% of companies have already cut jobs in anticipation of artificial intelligence taking over the work, regardless of whether the technology is actually ready to do so. 60%. The decision, in other words, has already been made. The technology is simply being asked to catch up to the redundancies. Read that sentence again, slowly. The redundancies came first. The replacement is being retrofitted afterwards. So which professions, specifically, have already been hollowed out? Let me name them plainly because the polite financial press will not translators. Gone. Not all of them, but the bottom 70% of the market. The corporate documents, the marketing copy, the technical manuals, the website localization has been eaten alive in under 3 years. The remaining work pays a third of what it did in 2021, and most of it is now post-editing the output of a machine. The job, as a sustainable career for a young person, has been quietly euthanized. Voice actors. The mid-tier of voice work, the e-learning courses, the corporate explainers, the lower-budget commercials, the airport announcements, the audiobook slush pile, has been substantially replaced by synthetic voices that, 2 years ago, sounded like a robot reading a hostage note, and now sound like your sister. The top 1% of voice talent is still working. Everybody else is, in industry parlance, retraining. Illustrators and concept artists. The freelance market, which sustained a generation of creative people through the 2010s, has imploded. Fiverr, Upwork, ArtStation, all report collapses in pricing for entry-level commissions. The work is still being done. It is being done by a man with a prompt window and 17 seconds. Junior copywriters, junior paralegals, junior data analysts, junior bookkeepers. Junior anything, in fact, where the word junior used to mean a human being doing the simple version of a job in order to one day do the complex version. The bottom rung of the ladder has been removed. Removed deliberately. Removed by chief financial officers who have looked at the numbers and decided that an entry-level employee is a luxury they no longer wish to afford. And nobody, in any government, in any country, is asking the obvious question. If there is no junior tier anymore, where do the senior people of 2040 come from? The answer, increasingly, appears to be that there will not be any. The profession will simply end with the people currently in it. Customer service representatives. Already gutted, and the gutting is not finished. Klarna was the headline. Behind it sit hundreds of thousands of call center roles in India, in the Philippines, in Manchester, in Glasgow, that are being closed not in dramatic press releases, but in the silent attrition of contracts not renewed. Radiologists. Yes, radiologists, the doctors. A profession that pays, in the United States, an average of $400,000 a year. 3 separate peer-reviewed studies in the last 18 months have shown that AI systems can now match, and in some specific tasks beat, board-certified radiologists at reading scans. The American College of Radiology is in open civil war about it. The hospital administrators are not. The hospital administrators are running the numbers. Recruiters. 3/4 of the cold outreach, CV screening, candidate shortlisting work in the recruitment industry is now done by software. The human recruiter has, in many firms, been redefined as the person who relays the software's decisions in a human voice, because the candidate, even now, expects a human voice. When the candidate stops expecting that, and they will very soon, the human recruiter is gone too. These are not predictions. These are the present tense. Now lift your eyes to the horizon. What is the timeline for everything else? Goldman Sachs, in a research note updated this March, projects that 300 million full-time equivalent jobs globally are exposed to displacement by AI within the next decade. The International Monetary Fund, the same year, put the global figure at 40% of all employment, rising to 60% in advanced economies like the United Kingdom, the United States, Germany, Japan. McKinsey, the consultancy that quietly advises most of the world's largest corporations, has put the figure of workers requiring transition by 2030 at between 400 million and 800 million people. 800 million. That is roughly the population of Europe, twice over. By 2030, which is, at the time of recording, 4 years and 7 months away. I want to be careful with these numbers because they are easy to dismiss, and the institutions producing them have a financial interest in the technology that produces the displacement. But here is what makes them harder to wave away. The forecasts have, year on year since 2023, all been revised in the same direction. Up. The IMF's first estimate in 2023 was lower than its 2024 estimate, which was lower than its 2025 estimate. Goldman's range has widened upwards. McKinsey's central case has hardened. The economists building these models, who have every professional reason to be cautious, are moving, in unison, towards a darker number. The professions in the firing line, in the order they are likely to fall, look something like this. This year, and next, the white-collar middle. Accountancy, beneath the partner level. Mid-tier law, beneath the partner level. Marketing operations. Internal communications. Human resources administration. The kind of office job that consists, at heart, of moving information from one form into another form. That work is finished. The companies have already decided. The only remaining question is the speed of the redundancy program. By 2028, the journalists, the photographers, except the very best, the financial analysts, except the very senior, the editors, the producers of the bottom 70% of television and online video content, the graphic designers below the creative director level, the architects whose work consists of producing planning drawings rather than original design, the teachers, partially, in any subject that can be tutored by a patient, infinitely available digital instructor. By 2030, and this is where it becomes genuinely vertiginous, the doctors begin. Not all of them. Not the surgeons, not for a while, but the diagnosticians. The general practitioners working from a script and a symptom checker. The dermatologists looking at photographs. The radiologists, already half gone. The pharmacists, at least the dispensing function. The therapists, in the lower tiers, where the job is largely the application of cognitive behavioral protocols that a patient could, and increasingly will, run on their phone at 3 a.m. By 2032, the drivers, lorry drivers, taxi drivers, delivery drivers. The autonomous vehicle technology, after a decade of false starts, is now deploying at scale in 3 Chinese cities, 4 American cities, and 1 British pilot. The economics are obvious. A lorry that does not sleep, does not eat, does not unionize, does not have a family, does not require insurance for human error, will, the moment it is legal, replace the lorry that does. There are roughly 3.5 million professional drivers in the United Kingdom and the United States combined. They will not be retrained as data scientists. They were not, in many cases, retrainable from the start. That is why they were drivers. By 2035, and I cannot say this with a straight face, but I am going to say it anyway, because the people building the systems do, the timeline begins to include roles that the optimists of 2020 said would never be touched. Software engineering itself, original research, strategic management, creative direction. Not because the AI will be better than the best humans in those fields, but because the AI will be good enough to allow 1 human to do the work of 10. And when 1 human can do the work of 10, the other 9 are not given a longer holiday. The other 9 are sent home. This is the seismic shift you asked about. It is not coming. It has begun. The earthquake is not arriving from over the horizon. We are already standing in it. We are simply, most of us, still upright, because the building has not finished falling yet. And here is the part that should keep you awake. Nobody is in charge. There is no committee. There is no plan. The technology is being deployed because each individual company, looking at its own balance sheet, finds it economically irrational not to deploy it. The chief executive who refuses to automate will be replaced by a chief executive who will. The shareholder who tolerates higher labor costs will be undercut by the shareholder who does not. The country that regulates aggressively will lose investment to the country that does not. Every single actor in the system, behaving rationally according to its own incentives, produces, in aggregate, an outcome that nobody, individually, voted for. An outcome that may, in fact, destroy the customer base on which the entire system depends, because a population without wages is a population without spending, and a population without spending is a population that no longer needs the products that the automated factories so efficiently produce. This is the contradiction at the heart of it, and the people running the largest companies on earth are aware of it, and they are building quietly the systems that they believe will manage the resulting population. Universal basic income pilots in 5 countries. Digital identity programs in 14. Central bank digital currencies in 87. The tools to feed, track, and control a population that no longer has anything to sell except its compliance. I am not telling you this is a conspiracy. I have said before that I do not believe in conspiracies, and I still don't. This is something worse than a conspiracy. A conspiracy implies a room full of people deciding. This is a room with nobody in it, and a machine that has been left running, and a door that, at some point in the last 2 years, quietly locked behind us. When does the crisis hit? The honest answer, the one the economists will not give you on television, is that the crisis is not a single moment. It is a slope. It started somewhere around 2023, and it steepens every quarter, and it does not have a bottom that anyone has yet been able to see. The unemployment figures will lag, because the official statistics are designed to count people who are looking for work, and a generation that has stopped looking will not show up in them. The first sign, the canary in the mine, will be the youth unemployment rate. Watch it. It is already rising, in every advanced economy, faster than at any point since the financial crisis. The graduates of 2024 are sending out 200 applications and getting 3 interviews. The graduates of 2026 are getting 1. The graduates of 2028 on the current trajectory will be getting none, because the entry-level job they are applying for will have been quietly closed. And then, somewhere between 2028 and 2032, on the current numbers, the crisis stops being statistical and becomes visible. A generation, fully educated, fully indebted, fully online, with nowhere to go and nothing to do. That is the moment the political system begins to crack, because no democracy in human history has ever survived a youth cohort with no future and a smartphone. What happens then is the real question, isn't it? Universal basic income, perhaps. Star Trek post-scarcity, perhaps, in some sanitized version. Or the other thing. The thing the documents I read for the last investigation gently described and politely refused to name. A managed population. A subsistence allowance paid in programmable currency with conditions attached. A digital identity required to receive it. A social score dressed up in less alarming language that determines how much you get and what you can spend it on. A future in which work has not been abolished but redistributed, so that a small minority works in increasingly unrecognizable jobs for the algorithms, and the rest of the population is, in the polite phrase the consultancy reports keep using, transitioned. The transition is the part they will not put a date on, because they do not know, and because if they did, they would not say. But the data does. The data says somewhere between 4 years from now and 10. The data says half of the jobs that exist as I am speaking these words will not exist by the time the child born this morning is in primary school. The data says the world your parents prepared you for has already ended, and the new one has not yet been built. And the gap between the two is the gap we are now walking across in the dark, on a rope, while the people who tied the rope explain in soft voices in beige rooms that everything is fine, and that we should not be alarmed, and that the future is going to be wonderful, eventually, for the people who survive it. The signal isn't lost. It's screaming, and we are, almost all of us, still pretending we cannot hear. Sleep well.